I'd like to bring to order the regular council meeting for Monday, October 22nd, 2018. Roll call, please. Mr. Lauer.
Mrs. Merrill.
Present.
Mr. Steigel. Here. Mr. Arcuri. Here. Mr. Berquist. Mr.
Here.
Lewis. Here. Mr. Ball. Present. Mr. Pitt.
Here.
All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting dated October 8, 2018.
So moved. Second.
All right. Any comments, changes, deletions, additions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. 7-0. Next, special reports. And the anomaly is here we have one.
Yes, we do.
Yes. And that would be from Mr. Jenkins from the Peters Township Sanitary Authority.
Yes. Thank you for having me here tonight. I put some information together in a packet there if you had a chance to take a look at it. I know I just handed it out this evening. I can speak to it a little bit, give you a brief overview of where we're at. I'm sure you're all aware construction started back in 2016. The original completion date was supposed to be February of this year. We were behind. There were some early issues, an ambitious schedule coupled with the restriction work site. Several flooding events contributed to delays in the construction. Most recently, late in the project, we realized that several vital components, motor starters for several of the pumps, had been excluded from the project scope and the contracts. And although the starters had always been a part of the design, a change order in the amount of approximately $100,000 was needed to purchase the equipment. To complicate the situation and the schedule, the manufacturer of the starters had some internal issues. They were going through a company merger, further delayed the manufacturing and delivery of the equipment, and then the ultimate delay in delivering and receiving and installing the equipment starters postponed the contractor's ability to conduct functional testing throughout the plant, ultimately delaying substantial completion by several months. But like I said in the letter, I'm happy to say that we are online. We came online at the beginning of February. It's operating as designed. We had an early test, 7 inches of rain, a rain event a week after we brought it online, and no issues. It ran. Water quality is right where we need it to be. The capacity's there. Some of the challenges, in hindsight, we had an aggressive and ambitious schedule. I had a conversation with the DEP representative, and he had even said that when we spoke with, he thought our original project schedule from the start was ambitious, and he said typically projects of this size and complexity extend out another 6 to 12 months just because of what you get into with the size of the project. And also the complexity associated with integrating. We have a lot of automated instruments and controls in this plant. It's all flow proportional. It opens and closes gates based on flows coming through the plant. That was a lot to tie together with our SCADA system, which is what we have. Another challenge that we had experienced was there was a for the SCADA control, there's an integration process that has to be essentially all the components in the plant need to be tied to the SCADA control system. The wiring associated with, there was a gap between what was called out in the contract for the electrical contractor and the general contractor. I guess it was lost in translation. It didn't happen. We got to the point we were making the integration. It was in the general contractor's scope of work, but he failed to secure a contractor to do it. And at that point in the game, we couldn't operate the plant. So it was a collaborative effort between the project engineer and the electrician and the general contractor to bring this point-to-point wiring and integration to fruition. The problem with it was, though, is it delayed the project a little further. So that's why I know I had hoped to be telling you at the beginning of 18 that we were online, and this is really what's kind of slowed us up at the end there. And in addition to that, I had also mentioned that we are moving forward with a dewatering facility. But the problem with that is it was located, or was planned to be located at the existing site. Well, we couldn't demo that site and start construction on that site until the new plant was online, because we needed to have treatment capabilities at the old site. So the contractor couldn't do work preemptively to start project on that sort of the site, because we couldn't do any demo work and start construction on the other plant. From the financing side, the overall percentage of change orders was 4%. An industry standard for a complex multi-prime project often exceeds 5%. Our original intention was to finance the majority of the dewatering project with internal capital funds. However, recent costs associated with the Hidden Brook sewer repairs, augmentation of the Stonehenge trunk sewer line, which will accommodate the new Peters Township High School, and multiple landslide-related sewer repairs in 18 required us to reprioritize our capital funds. And rather than exhaust our capital funds and eliminate necessary capital projects within our plan, the authority identified low lending rates that felt it was more prudent to pursue a tax-exempt 15-year bank loan of $1.2 million. The borrowing will also go towards refunding our 2003 bank loan, which was at a higher interest rate. So a portion of that's going to go to dewatering, to the project and these other projects, and refunding the bank loan. If you take a look, I believe it's figure 2. It shows our rate structure, just to give you some perspective at where our rates are at now and how these additional projects are going to affect that. We are essentially right in the middle there, our current rate. If you look 4 bars over, it has our projected 2020 rate. Essentially, the additional loan debt is consistent with what we had planned rate increase of 10 to 12% in 2020. The projected additional debt service equates to less than $12 per year per customer. Overall, with the sewer project, I know I am, and I think the rest, when I speak for the rest of the authority, we're pleased that we met our project objectives, ensuring the health and well-being of the community with the state-of-the-art treatment facility. Allows for continued growth and development in the township while maintaining an affordable sewer rate compared to other local communities. I can speak briefly to our sewer interceptor projects, but I kind of leave it open if you have any questions regarding the treatment plant specifically. I'll be glad to answer them.
Anybody have any questions?
Just one. Did you have liquidated damages with any of the contractors?
We have not. We are in the process of looking at. There's an issue with the timing, and we're pursuing that right now. They had proposed a claim to us, and we're trying to sort through that. We're like a couple weeks into that, dealing with them, and it really ties to the timing of it. They have issues. They claim they have costs associated with the delay. So we're working the details out with them on that.
All right. Anyone else?
I have a question. You indicated, I think, that there was something that needed to be acquired for $100,000 that everybody thought was in the bid, but it wasn't. What was that again?
It was motor starters. That was actually for the 4 pumps at the back of the plant, which essentially, when the water's treated, it gets pumped out into the creek.
They were the original drawings and all?
They were, yes, they were included in design, but they didn't list them as a line item. the engineer either didn't include them in the project documents when they bid the project.
The authority's engineer didn't do it?
No, the project engineer. Well, the authority's project, not our staff engineer, but our project engineer on the
I mean,
project.
how did he overlook that?
I
mean, that's $100,000.
believe me, we've had that conversations over and over
Who's
again.
the township engineer? Or who's the engineer that you...
The engineer for the project is GHD.
Okay.
Well, with the potential to recover some of that, but it's not $100,000 that we would be able to recover. It would only be the increment cost from what it would have been
Right.
at the time
At
of
the
bid
bid, yeah.
versus.
Yeah, and that's, I think, it wasn't like it was added, it's, at the end, it should have been included at bid time, so maybe what we, potential exposure there was the advantage of having some bid pricing on it at that time.
Okay. I'm just... That seems like a big thing to miss.
It was not something that we took lightly. It was, we're working that out with our project engineer.
So just to clarify, you don't anticipate an increase to the Peters Township sanitary users for 2019. You anticipate that for 20?
Yes, and we had always had that 20 out there, and some of that was tied to the Interceptor project also that we're looking to move into. And I can speak briefly to that if you don't have any other questions regarding the plant.
All right.
Thank you for explaining.
Thank you.
Our next capital project will be the augmentation of our sewer interceptor projects. It's the last page in your packet, kind of a brief overview. We could not increase the pipe size and capacity until we had a treatment plant online, so this is the second phase of that subsequent project. We're currently in the process of obtaining easements and applying for funding through Penvest to increase the capacity of these two trunk sewers. It's essentially 4,000 linear feet of in-trench replacement and 2,500 linear feet of new pipe lining. We'll also increasing capacity from a 12-inch line to an 18-inch line. And the Oakwood Road segment will include approximately 3,600 linear feet of new pipe, and again, increasing pipe diameter from 12 to 18. I think I had mentioned that this requirement was also a part of our corrective action plan for the old plant to be incorporate. We had some issues with wet weather overflows in the area. Sanitary discharges. So this proposal, we've done some modeling to ensure that this increase in capacity is going to be sufficient to address the wet weather issues that we have now and also ensure additional development in the area as it comes.
So just to clarify, that the wet weather issues when we have significant rain, the current sewer pipes are inadequate or causing runoff to get into the sewer system.
Yeah, and we have a dye test program. We're going out checking homes, making sure that people don't have downspouts tied in. It's a struggle, actually, everybody in all sanitary authorities in Western Pennsylvania.
I just wanted to clarify that for.
It is. It's a separate system too. It's not a combined system where some systems are designed to have storm water coming into the system, but our system, both of them are primarily separate sanitary systems. There's no combined sewers.
So could you clarify, are you checking every residence? Is that what I heard you say? Or
We do.
Our
Our dye test program right now is time of sale dye testing. We do on our.
That's required for sale.
Yes.
Are you catching up on that because you were backlogged pretty significantly?
Yeah, we did. We're like a week out right now, which is we were.
That's really a good improvement.
It is. Yeah, we had, and I'm sure some of you maybe have gotten some calls.
Oh, yeah.
We had some issues with that. And we've made provisions so that's not an issue next year. Paul and I had talked. I think the spike in housing sales in the township was pretty significant this year, and we weren't really prepared to address that. But we'll be ready for that next year.
Perfect.
But to answer your question about the dye testing, we are looking at that. We'd like to try to move forward with area-wide dye testing. a couple things we have to try to solve is going to be the manpower issue, is dedicating a staff to just that area to help address this, and then try to balance out the cost with doing that and justifying it with
The property owner.
how you put, there's going to be costs that come back to the property owner too. It's usually easier to do at the time of the sale because you have an exchange of funds there on the table. It's a little more difficult to walk into a neighborhood, especially with, you have some residents on fixed incomes and then try to impose them replacing their lateral or doing something significant. So we're taking a hard look at that, trying to figure out what's the best way to go about that.
That is always a tough line to cross there, but at the end of the day, it's like any other utility. If their water line or gas line were to have an incident or rupture, that would have to pay for that. And then in this case, it's costing all of the ratepayers within that more money because of the water runoff. So I think implementing the die test at sale at least starts to reduce the amount of water runoff, but it's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
All right, anyone else?
What's the horizon for this project? What do you anticipate the duration, when it might start?
Oh, the sewer interceptor, I'm sorry. The construction that is anticipated to start in the spring, and we're anticipating 6 months. We've had some communication with planning. I know they had said with us doing work in that area, and the school district would like us to be done any of the road work before school gets back in. So that's, we're trying to work our planning around that.
Okay. Mr. Jenkins, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is audience comments. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience, limited to 5 minutes-ish, to discuss any item that's not on the agenda. Anyone in the audience wishing to take the opportunity? Seeing none, we'll move to unfinished business, which there's also none, and takes us to new business. And first item there is authorize the appropriate township officials to execute an agreement redefining a portion of sewage treatment service areas between Upper St. Clair and Peters Township.
And this is a relatively complicated process for a very simple solution. There are properties located in Upper St. Clair that drain towards Peters Township. There are some properties in Peters Township that drain towards Upper St. Clair. There is an existing agreement under which Peters Township Sanitary Authority is to provide treatment for the Deerfield Manor properties. This amendment simply provides the mechanism to make that happen. What makes it complicated in terms of its process is that not only is Peters Township, the Peters Township Sanitary Authority, Upper St. Clair, but the city of Pittsburgh and Elkassan are all parties to this agreement. And so therefore it's going to take action by each of their boards. Enoch's here so he can answer any questions you might have about it, but it is as simple as that appears. There is a problem right now at Deerfield Manor. They have a pump station that can't handle the flows, and as a result of that, there is a problem in Upper St. Clair, and this has been envisioned for quite some time as the solution to that problem. So,
but this whole agreement has existed for a long time.
This agreement, the original agreement goes back to 1950 when Upper St. Clair indicated that all of their sewage would be treated by Elkassan. It was modified in 1964 to, in essence, accommodate something like this. This particular Second Amendment clarifies that and makes it clear how, where this sewage is going to be treated.
So are we already picking up Deerfield Manor?
We are not now, but this will provide for that.
But what about the fact that there's something wrong with that pump station? Are we taking over that too?
No, because this is going to eliminate that pump station. It gravity feeds towards Peters Township. So there won't be a pump station there, just like, and correct me if I'm wrong, just like at Linkview, it will gravity feed towards St. Clair.
Actually, at Linksview, we pump out of Linksview now into our system. We'll have to pump into their system.
Okay.
Yeah. But the Deerfield Manor, their pump station will go away and they'll come to us by gravity. We don't have an issue with capacity taking their flows, and that was proposed by them to deal with the.
And we're giving up something, right?
You have to come up to the podium, please.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, right now in the Deerfield Manor area, I think they have it called out on there. There are, right now I believe there's 34 properties that'll come to us, but a potential of 78. The Linksview Drive area of our system, there's 11 taps, and that was kind of a negotiated exchange to get Alcosan on board for the customers, but it addresses the flow is not going to become an issue for us, for them coming into our system. And when we pump, it's going to be a different part of their system, so they won't have issues.
What are they taking from us? I don't understand that.
They're taking 11 customers on Linksview Drive.
That's it?
Yeah.
And we're going to be the authority's going to be responsible for all the sewer lines up into Deerfield Manor?
No.
No, just
where they tie into our system at the line, at the township.
So we're just going to take the flow.
Yeah. And we'll bill how that'll work. It won't, essentially, we do that already with our customers in Marilla Manor. We have customers in Peters Township that flow into Upper St. Clair's system. They're bulk customers. That's how that'll work with our customers at Linkview. We'll just get one bill from Alcosan, and that's blended into our rate. Those customers coming into us from Deerfield will get billed our rate directly, one bill to Upper St. Clair. They'll still be Upper St. Clair's customers. We'll send Upper St. Clair one bill for their usage.
Of whatever St. Clair is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Frank, as long as you have capacity, you want customers, because that generates revenue. The hang-up with this, in part, has been Alcosan is very possessive of their customers and don't like giving up customers. So that's been part of the hang-up in getting this approved.
Okay.
Has Alcosan approved it?
It's starting here, and Peters Township, the Peters Township Sanitary Authority, and Upper St. Clair are going to approve it first. Then my understanding, it's headed to the city of Pittsburgh and then finally to Alcosan.
That's correct.
So, Mr. Jenkins, as far as development, is the area that we're going to accept from Deerfield fully developed, or do you anticipate additional construction or new homes?
There's an additional, it's 78 total. They're at 34 now, so there's another 44 potential taps coming in there.
But the total number of taps are what's shown there.
But we'll charged for whatever we treat.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
So good. So it doesn't seem like it's really a problem for us.
No, it hasn't. I think it worked through the planning the longest.
Yeah.
It's been the longest time is trying to get it through Alcosan and the city of Pittsburgh. That's been the holdup for the last 8 years, I guess.
So the Sanitary Authority is going to consider this tomorrow night. So what my recommendation to council is that you approve it contingent upon approval by the Peters Township Sanitary Authority, because we don't want to be...
And everybody else, right?
Well, our only concern is protecting the Peters Township Sanitary Authority, and as long as they've approved it, I don't have a problem with us signing, because that signature is what's needed to move it to its next stage.
All right, I'll make a motion that we authorize the appropriate township officials to execute an agreement redefining a portion of sewage treatment service areas between Upper St. Clair and Peters Township, subject to the Peters Township Sanitary Authority's approval.
Second.
I think Dave might beat it a little bit there, so Dave has the second. Anyone else have any further comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is 7-0. Next item is appointment to the Environmental Quality Board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we appoint Ali Wortman to the Environmental Quality Board.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
I'd only like to make the point that she is a junior at Peters Township High School. And we are continuing the practice of having a student member on this board. Thank you.
Which is a good idea.
Okay. The last member from the high school actually was an excellent part of the environmental bond board, where we were eager to continue the process. Next is approve a settlement between Pinehurst Land Partners and Peters Township related to the purchase of the former Rolling Hills Country Club property.
As council's aware, Mr. Bresnahan, the special counsel for Peters Township and the Peters Township School District, has reached an agreement with Pinehurst Land Partners regarding the purchase of the former Rolling Hills Country Club property. Under the terms of the proposed settlement, the total compensation package is $14,270,439, which includes $14 million in compensation for the property, as well as interest of $266,439. It's my recommendation that council authorize the appropriate township officials to execute the settlement agreement between Pinehurst Land Partners and Peters Township.
All right.
I move that we approve the settlement.
I'll
Not
second.
happily, but I move.
I'll second it.
And is that in action approving the amount that we are paying them, or does that not come into the bill of being approved?
Well, this is approving the settlement, which has the amount in it. Within the list of bills is a check for that sum of money, which you'll be approving.
Yes, I.
$1,597,719.58.
I think it's also important to note as part of the settlement that we are not allowed to use the property for any public purpose, not solely the purpose that was
I was going to ask
condemned.
whether that was in there.
Yeah, I reviewed it. It's in there.
Does it matter that there's a lot more parties to the condemnation than the settlement? Does that matter?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because I think all the other parties that were named to the condemnation were the mineral rights owners and other people who potentially had an interest. But I think in the course of this, we flushed out that those interests weren't there.
Okay.
John can correct me on that if I'm
I
wrong.
think that's correct. I don't think anybody joined that litigation. I think they all just let it go live.
So it's final, isn't that? Or
Yes.
whatever. Okay. I'll make a motion that.
No, we already have a motion.
Second.
Sorry.
That's all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is 7-0. Next item is resolution expressing the township's intent to issue a bond issue and to utilize a portion of the bond's proceeds to reimburse the township for capital expenses incurred prior to the issuance of the bond.
That's a lot.
As we had discussed at the budget workshop, I believe that to be able to not only cover the additional cost associated with this land acquisition, but to also to have sufficient funds to undertake the projects which we are committed to at Rolling Hills Park already, which include the road and the intersection improvement, and any additional projects we may want to do in terms of the development of the park. It will be necessary for the township to issue bonds. Towards that end, so that in fact we can reimburse ourselves for those bond proceeds, not only for this additional expenditure for the acquisition of the property, but also any bills that are incurred for the development of the property prior to the issuance of the bond. We need to pass a resolution that expresses our intent to do so. So that's what this resolution is. It's an expression that we intend to issue a bond, and that if in fact we follow through with that intention, we intend to reimburse ourselves for expenses incurred.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 10-02-18 with respect to the bond issue as so stated by Mr. Lauer.
Second.
Any further conversation?
Just a clarification for everyone. We do have a check for that amount of money already ready to go that will be approved later, and that's why we need to do this right now. We have the
Yes.
ability to pay the money that's
Yes.
required by law, but we have other things going on. So just so people understand, we're not jumping the gun, but we need to get this moving.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. 7-0. Next item is authorization of the township manager to solicit proposals for an independent financial advisor to assist with the issuance of bonds.
So the first step in the process of selling municipal bonds is to acquire the services of an independent financial advisor. That person will advise council not only on the structure of the bond issue, but also the timing. They will also assist with acquiring other professional services, including taking competitive bids, not only for the bond itself, but for bond counsel, printing costs, and things like that. So it's my recommendation that council authorize us to issue an RFP, and we'll be back to you with the results of that.
All right, I'll make that motion that we authorize the township manager to solicit proposals for the financial advisor to assist with the possible issuance of the municipal bond and related work.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that is 7-0. Next item is departure from regulations restricting direct driveway access to a collector road.
So the next three items on the agenda are all related to each other. One is this departure of regulations from the regulation restricting driveway access to a collector road. This is coming to council as a result of a request to subdivide a piece of property so that a home can be constructed. And then finally, there's a requirement with regard to amending the Act 537 plan to provide for sewerage. Do you want to go through this?
Real briefly, this property is on Bower Hill Road. It's owned by William and Cecilia Pisarcik. It's 4.9 acres. They want to subdivide off 0.72 acres so that their daughter can build a home. The Bower Hill Road is a collector road. Our subdivision regulations say you can't create new lots with direct driveway access to a collector. I went out there with our traffic engineer, Mike Mundry, where they're going to put the driveway, which is at the extreme top of their proposed new Lot 2. We'll be at a spot on Bower Hill Road that has more than adequate sight distance, looking both left and right as you would come in and out of that driveway. The other thing is that this property is located in the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority watershed. There is not public sewer available to this property now. The owners have negotiated a deal with their neighbor across the street where the public sewer exists. They're running a public line over and across Bower Hill Road and going to provide not only the new lot, but the remaining acreage that will remain there, public sewer access. So that's the other part of this agenda item, is that they're going to be submitting to DEP for their planning modules. So Planning Commission did review this at their August 9th meeting and recommended council approve the plan subject to those 9 conditions listed in our report to council and the township manager.
The one thing that, well, actually 2 things that I would add is, one, Township has a history in situations like this where you're subdividing a piece of property and it's for a member of the family to build a home, grant these kind of departures on this road. The other thing that, and I don't know that the subdivision plan actually shows it, but you may want to, as part of this plan, record the fact that a departure has been granted so that when this property would ever come back in again, council would be aware of that.
Yeah. So my question is, we're not modifying the existing ordinance, though. We're just like eliminating that requirement for this specific set of facts and this specific plot.
That is absolutely correct, and that's one of the reasons why I think a note on the plan would be a good thing, so that if in fact this other parcel ever comes in to be subdivided, that there would be a notation that a departure has already been granted, and it may well be that you choose not to grant a departure on that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I do too.
That was the only really issue that I had. I mean, I reviewed this, back and before the meeting. I'll make a motion that we approve the departure from the regulations as reiterated by Mr. Lauer and by the Planning Commission recommendation for this plan. Do we want to do all of them or just one?
I think you need to do one at a time, but
well, then
just go
that's
through
my
it.
motion.
I'll second it. But I have one question. Does the location of the driveway connecting to Bower Hill make any difference? Like if they decided to put the driveway down at the other end, would it make any difference?
A little bit.
So do we want to add a condition on the plan that the driveway has to be located at what would be was that the southern end or something of that? And I'm only asking that because if we're granting, the departure based on the representation that the driveway is going to be up on top, and let's say they redesign the house and they come in on the other end, if that's an issue. If it's not an issue, it doesn't matter. But if you going out there and looking at where the driveway was going to be, and that was part of the basis for your determination.
But I was going to say, but why don't you make it subject to the approval of the planning, review and approval of the planning department, and that way we'll look at it when it comes in to make sure that it's okay.
I'll make that amendment.
All right, then I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of this item, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is 7-0. Next is approval for recording purposes, the Sarsic plan of lot shown on drawing prepared by KLH Engineers dated August 2018 for William and Cecilia Pasarsic.
I'll make a motion that we approve the subdivision.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. 7-0, Mr. Lauer. And then finally, resolution.
Question. That would be subject to the restriction we just put on it concerning the driveway location. Right. Okay. Sorry about that.
No, good question. Resolution amending the Peters Township Act 537 sewage plan as to provide access to sewage services for the Pasarsic plan of lots.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that's also 7-0. Next item is award of a bid to replace the fence and backstop at Field 4 of Peters Wood Park.
So on October 9th, bids were open to replace the fencing at the multi-purpose field of Peterswood Park. The 2018 operating budget includes an appropriation of $70,000 for this project. The low bidder was Allegheny Fence at $66,702. So it's within the amount that was budgeted, and it's my recommendation that Peters Township Council award a bid to replace the fence and backstop at Field 4 to Allegheny Fence in that amount.
So moved. Second. And this is Fields 3 and 4.
This is the multi-purpose field that sits on the left-hand side halfway up the hill. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Are you asking for both alternates?
Yes, because they...
1 and 2? Or
yes.
I see there's 3 on here.
1 and 2. Oh, excuse me, it's 2 and 3, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's 2 and 3.
I have a question. Alternate 1 and alternate 2, that's additional fencing? Is that what that is?
No. What they did was they divided the fencing. Yeah, they divided the fencing up into 3 sections. Okay. Their concern was that they not bring you a bid that exceeded the amount of the appropriation. Okay. So what this is if you're familiar with that area up there, it is the entire field. It's the entire fence that surrounds it by awarding the base bid. Alternate 2 and alternate 3.
And there's already an existing fence.
There's an existing fence that's being replaced.
All of it is already fenced.
Yes.
We're not adding fence.
We're not adding fence anymore.
Okay.
Is there a backstop?
Yes, there is.
We don't use that field though anymore, do we?
Yes, they do. I don't know who actually is in there, but that backstop is in fact used.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen anyone there in a while. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. And that is also 7-0. Rolling right along, authorize the appropriate township officials to sign a contract with DCED for a Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program grant.
So we had applied for a grant to extend the trail from Arrowhead Trail up into Rolling Hills Park. We had initially applied for $250,000. What was awarded to us was $160,000. This project, the cost of the project probably doesn't change, so our share of the project will increase. But I think this is an example of what we can hope to see inside of Rolling Hills Park. Discrete projects that we can identify and get assistance from the state of Pennsylvania to be able to accomplish.
Beautiful.
And I should point out that, you know, this grant is really the efforts of Michelle Harmel and Ryan Jaworski. So.
When's the deadline to actually do the work and submit the payment?
June.
It's usually 2 or 3 years. I cannot remember from this one specifically,
Because it makes no sense to do that if it can't connect to anything.
Yeah, I believe it's 3 years.
June 30th, 2021, according to the Article 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That was the
So
only
we feel
question.
comfortable that we can get that accomplished by then. That's 2 years.
Yes.
3 years.
I'd like to move that we authorize the appropriate township officials to sign a contract with Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development for the Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program grant for $160,000.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That is also 7-0. Next is resolution amending the Peters Township Police Policy Manual so as to amend the policy and procedures relating to the use of body-worn cameras.
As council is aware, in January of this year, we were provided body-worn cameras for all officers in Peters Township to be used on a trial period of 1 year. They have proven their worth already. What this modification to the procedures does is to bring our policy that was adopted about a year ago in line with some national standards for access and review. In addition to that, it creates an obligation to publish that policy on our township website. And the reason why Chief Grimes is supporting that is that there's an opportunity come next year, we're going to have to pay for these cameras. There's an opportunity for grant funding if, in fact, our policy meets national standards, including that. So he's somewhat confident that those funds will be available, and this is a step towards that.
I'll move that we approve the resolution. I don't know if it has a number. 10-04-18, amending the police manual policy and procedures relating to the use of body-worn cameras.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Hey,
We're
Paul,
just rolling along at 7-0.
I just want to let you know there was some on the news this evening about fire issues with these body cameras.
Oh, really?
And I don't know what manufacturer it was, but might have the chief look into that.
Well, we'll check that out.
I don't want half the force being, on workman's comp.
Self-destroying evidence, right?
Yeah, yeah, self-destroying evidence.
I can tell you, they come in use on a couple different occasions, but on one occasion we had a complaint from a resident concerning an arrest that occurred in that house. And when you saw what was on the videos and and when you listened to what was being said, the stories were completely opposite. And one of the things they demonstrated was the professional nature and patience of your police officers handling what was a very difficult situation. So I think from everybody's standpoint, I think they serve a very important purpose.
There's another point I forgot to make while we were talking about this, but I thought I saw in here a section where it talked about how long we're going to keep the retention policies for these tapes. Or am I wrong? Is that something?
It's not part of this, but all records in the state of Pennsylvania are governed by the Records Retention Act, and I would assume that that's what would govern this, as well as what our responsibility is to maintain records that are involved in criminal cases. So, you know what, the vast majority.
But I would think that part of the policy for us having the body camera is to protect the township against lawsuits in the event that, you know, and I thought I saw someplace they were. 171. What page is it? 171. I saw someplace where it was something like 2 years or something like that. But if part of your goal is to do, you know, just to protect yourself, I mean, I would think it would have to be longer than.
Well, 2 years is the statute of limitations for
negligence. Well, yeah, but what if it's a minor that's involved?
Well,
and the statute doesn't start to run until they're 18, so it could be a lot longer than 2 years. I'm just saying.
No, you got a point there.
Yeah. I mean, that's something we.
The challenge will be the amount of video that you're capturing is incredible, and so.
Got to be able to store it.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about cameras, also point out that the traffic light cameras we installed caught the guy who was ripping off the ATM. So kudos to the chief for coming up with that one.
Yep. Good point. All right. I lost my train of thought. Did we vote yet on this?
I think we did. You said something out.
Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda is authorization for the township manager to solicit bids for the demolition of a building located at 218 Valley Brook Road.
Yes, and that's my first mistake. I have a typographical error. That should be 214.
All right, 214 Valley Brook Road.
Yes.
That's better known as St. Petersburg.
Yes.
Well, no, it's just part of that.
But as council will recall, back on July 3rd, 2017, the Construction Appeals Board issued a decision that gave Mr. and Mrs. Courtney 90 days to either abate the problem or to submit plans and have them approved. We are now 90 days and a year later, and in my opinion, we are no closer to plans being approved than we were on that date. And that's, again, I'm not sure that Mr. and Mrs. Courtney would share my perspective, but quite frankly, with regard to this, the planning department has been more accommodating than we would have been with any other developer trying to get those approvals done, but yet we're still not there. So what's required to move ahead with the project is an approved site plan as well as an approved building permit. The site plans that have been submitted or we have reviewed are totally inadequate and are not complete enough to be placed before the Planning Commission. Just recently, we have been told that the building that was submitted with the planning for the building permit is not the building that they wish to build now, but rather, instead of a two-story building, a one-story building. One of the things that we did in an attempt to accommodate the timetable created by the Construction Appeals Board was to consider reviewing the site plan and the building permit simultaneously. If, in fact, we are to continue down this process, I would think we should go back to a normal order and require that the site plan be done first, I do not want to charge the Courtneys for reviewing an additional building permit, and that's what would be required because this is a completely new drawing, while it is unclear that a site plan can be approved. So that's where we are. At this point, what I'm asking for is permission or authorization to go out and solicit bids for the demolition of the buildings as was provided for in the decision by the Construction Appeals Board. We have an estimate that we have received that it could be as much as $85,000. If in fact we were to undertake that work, we would be responsible for paying the contractor, but would have the ability to lien the property as a guarantee of eventual payment. So,
Would it be just the property that we raise or any property that that individual owns?
Well, just when we raise, because it's not like a judgment that would have attached to any real estate. Just the improvement that we made, like if we cut their lawn or if we did anything like that.
Okay, so it'd just be that.
Now, the Courtneys are here with their counsel, and I'm not sure if they want to do it, if counsel would be willing to hear them on an agenda item, or if they even want to speak.
I think they're entitled to.
We want to have a motion first?
No, I think that they're entitled to be heard.
Who would like to speak?
Does anybody want to make a statement or explain to us what seems to be the delay?
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pamela Enck. I represent Ed and Susan Courtney in regards to the property at 214 Valley Brook, which is also known, I believe you mentioned, as the St. Petersburg Center. This has been going on for a while, and as Mr. Lauer referred to, the original plan was a two-story building for that piece of property. Part of that, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an explanation as to why the Courtneys decided to change the plan down to a one-story. There was an easement along Arrowhead Trail, which they had been assured that they were basically going to be able to use in perpetuity. We had been progressing along several meetings, and at one point it was made known to us that the township felt that the easement had been extinguished. And to make a long story short, notice was served at the end of March, I believe, to terminate that easement. So that threw a big monkey wrench into the plans for a two-story building at that site. By the end of April, which is when the easement was extinguished, Mrs. Courtney began looking, who has managed a number of projects. She's got a background in engineering. She began working with the site plan engineer to try to try to accommodate what the township was asking for. Again, several meetings occurred in June. There was a meeting in February, again in March. The easement was extinguished at the end of April. Was there a meeting in May? No.
We submitted another site plan on May 10th.
Okay, on May 10th.
Mm-hmm.
And
is that the one-story site plan?
No.
Okay.
No, it was not. And at that point, there was another meeting in June after I believe you guys had looked at the site plan, and there were two other letters that came, I believe, from the Sanitary Authority, and the other one escapes me. Gateway Engineers. And at that point, things got a little bit mucked up because right after that, they got the last letter. I believe the letters were issued on the 18th of June and the 27th of June. For the same property, there was a criminal complaint issued. Mrs. Courtney and Mr. Courtney were actually kind of on me all the time saying, we need to talk to them about this. And I said, look, I don't do criminal law, but I'm not letting you talk to anybody right now. And so they hired criminal counsel who told them the same thing. In the meantime, Mrs. Courtney was not idle. That's when she had this little bit of idle time, was when she and Mr. Barton looked the plans over very, very well. And decided that the loss of that easement was pretty much fatal to a two-story building. So that's when they began redrafting the plans. That took place basically between July, August, and early in September. The criminal charges were not dismissed until the end of September. And by that time, right before that happened, we met with Mr. Zook. And I understand the council was pretty much down this road, as Mr. Lauer explained today. However, the situation is different now. She has drawn up plans, Mrs. Courtney has, and they've actually been prepared by an architect now. I think she has a copy with her tonight.
Yeah, we've submitted them.
Yeah, they've been submitted to to Mr. Zook now. I don't know what's happened with them since
Nothing
they've been
has happened
submitted.
with them, because what would be required is that a building permit application would have to be filed.
Okay.
That is not timely because there is not a site plan approval.
Right.
And the site plans that have been submitted have never been complete, despite the fact that we've met on that numerous occasions about what's required to be in a site plan. So
Okay.
that's kind of where we are.
All right, so I guess, and then our question, and this was part of what Mrs. Courtney had hoped to discuss, was does the taking of the building down, because it's less than half the square footage now than it started out, does that affect the site plan at all? And Mr. Lowry had mentioned, I'm not sure who I'm supposed to be addressing here, but Mr. Lauer had mentioned filing another application. That was actually something, I think I threw it out during our meeting with Mr. Zook, but it wasn't a big topic of discussion, so at that point, I actually had said, would it be better for you to withdraw the original plan and submit a new plan? They do understand that there's a cost involved in that, Mr. and Mrs. Courtney do, and they're willing to do that. That's part of what I'm here to tell you this evening.
But ultimately, not to interrupt you, but so if you're going to go to a one-story building, you're going to have to demolish what's there now, right?
Well, part of it, the top floor, and that's the thing, and that's part of it, is what I wanted to assure you guys. I had discussed this with Mr. Courtney last week. If he has permission from you guys, because we didn't know if we would need a permit to begin that, he can start taking that down like next week. He can start taking down the top floor of that building. So it's kind of like you guys get your cake and eat it too, because he can start tearing that building down while you're working on reviewing the new site plan and the new building plans. And that way, I don't know that this is, I have faith in Mrs. Courtney and Mr. Courtney. I believe that they're going to be able to come up with a plan that's going to be acceptable. I think if you guys all work together on this, you're going to have a nice building there.
But if I can, and this is the point that I would like to make. That's a picture of what this property looked like on 2016, in April of 2016. Okay. This is what this property looked like on June 2007. And what you will see, there is no difference in the state of the building. And this actually goes back to this building permit originally being issued about 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the state of the building has been this for 18 years. So where I can appreciate the request for our patience, I guess my question is, when should somebody's patience run out?
Yeah, we've been very considerate of trying to get this to work. I think Mr. Courtney came in front of council, I want to say, a year and a half ago, 2 years or so, to discuss the building. And
right. And my understanding is they couldn't.
Nothing has been done.
My understanding is they couldn't take any action until they got a. Excuse me. I believe that they couldn't take any action until there was a permit issued. If there's some kind of an interim permit or something that will allow them to work on it, they'll do it.
There is not, because this property, just like all other properties, is subject to having an approved site plan and having an approved building permit. When the hearing in front of the Construction Appeals Board occurred, Mr. Courtney had indicated that within 90 days he could have those approvals. And we worked diligently with him to do that as best we can. But despite that effort, 90 days and a year later, we're still in the same place.
Well, but you're losing the sight of the fact that two significant things have happened just over, since earlier this year, that being the loss of the easement. When that happened, basically the whole thing had to be, they had to reconsider the whole thing, which is what Mrs. Courtney, as I explained, spent a lot of the summertime doing. And she specifically asked on numerous occasions, again, since the criminal charges have been lifted, that they've asked for specifics, and the only response is still, well, you have these letters. So,
and these letters clearly outline what needs to be done to deliver a complete site plan.
Well,
and a design professional who works in this area shouldn't even be asking these questions. We have site plans for commercial properties submitted and approved all of the time. Our job is to make sure they're in compliance with the ordinance. Our job is not to draw them and draft them. That's the job of a design professional.
Mr. Lowell, can I say something?
I think you have to state your name, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Susan Courtney.
Yeah.
Thank you. When we submitted, the first submittal that we made, Mr. Muzzy had given me a sheet of things that we needed to submit. Everything that he asked us for was on that sheet. Since that time, we did submit a site plan. Since that time, we have submitted probably 4 or 5 site plans. Things keep changing.
They've been insufficient. You've just been given notice of the insufficiency.
And we try to correct the situation.
Well, unlike other applicants, you're not under a 90-day provision that's a year old. Most applicants, if you don't come forward with your project, we could care less. Because you have an existing site that's subject to demolition, you were given 90 days, now we're a year to 90 days. My advice to council is vote to approve this motion, to put it out for bid. In the interim, if something changes and you come across some great project that gets approved by the township, then we'll look at it then. But as of now, all we're looking for is what a price it would cost to get it demolished.
Well, I did submit another site plan on the 13th.
Well, and I suspect, Ms. Courtney, you may continue to submit site plans. Our timetable is different than yours.
Well,
you submitted a building drawing.
Pardon?
You submitted architectural drawings for a building.
And a site plan that worked with the. I submitted a site plan, a lighting plan, a planting plan, and plans for, which we don't have anymore, retaining walls or any of that. There was also a sheet for any of that. I submitted that plus a revised set of building plans. There are some items on that site plan that aren't there, but only because we changed to a pitched roof, specifically because we know that in the township ordinance there is a clause that gives you some relief on your buffer. I have a buffer behind the building along the bike trail. I don't know what to do with it. I was not able to talk to the township about any of this under my council's
Direction.
Yeah.
Yes.
We told them not to talk to anybody in the criminal.
But I need some direction from the township. We are 95% there. Most of the things that are on the list from Gateway and from the township are no longer applicable with the new site plan. Everything else we can meet once we get answers from the township as to exactly what we can do with that buffer strip. There's a few other answers that I need, things that I don't know the answers to. I need to sit down with someone from the township. That's why I have emailed numerous times asking for specifics as to what you want on the site plan. And I just continually get back the same letters that really, most of these letters no longer apply.
So, Mrs. Courtney, what is your new plan now? What does that involve doing with the current building? Taking the top floor off and doing what with it?
The current building was an existing building. It's been there since 1950. We had it rented until 2004. We had tenants in that building until 2004. We originally applied to work on that building, but in the meantime, there was a flood, and from the bike trail that flooded the property, and Mr. Anthony, that used to own the next building, sold to us.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I've only lived here since 2004. Did you just say that there were tenants?
There were tenants.
In the building that's wide open and has no interior?
It wasn't wide open until 2004.
There were tenants before that.
There were tenants. It was a big blue building. It was blue T111. And it had Wenzel garage doors and Widener Electronics, and then I had an office in that building while we were working on the other building. We didn't start it until 2004. There was a lapse in time. I will admit that. We had 2 bankruptcies of our larger tenants, and then my husband had 2 strokes and 2 heart attacks. There is a lapse in time there. But in 2016, my husband contacted Mr. Muzzy and said he was going to restart the building. He was down there working. Shortly, we went into the winter months. He had the masons ready to go. He had the steel people ready to go. And then we received the condemnation letter and stopped work. And we have not been able to do anything since.
Okay, I think at this juncture, the item on the agenda is an authorization by council for the township manager to solicit bids.
I'd ask your, I'm sorry, Mr. President, is that the right name? Mr. Chairman?
Call me king.
I would actually ask, and I'm just going to put forth, I'd ask that you table that, because now that we've been able to be here and in front of everyone, and it's actually been nice to have everybody in the same room, I would ask that you table this for.
I don't see that happening.
And council, let me tell you, what they're doing is putting it out for bids. So the bids would have to come back in, then they'd have to vote to actually accept the bid. That's not happening tonight.
I understand that, but what I don't want to happen is Mrs. Courtney is asking for direction, and so far we've not been able to convince anybody to sit down and meet with her.
Oh, that'd be wrong. You cannot say that we have not met with the Courtneys.
No, I didn't say that. I just meant since they submitted the plans for the new building. Mr. Valauer, I didn't say that at all. You have met with us. You met with us in February and again in March and June, I believe you were.
And I think one of the last letters were, if you don't understand the ordinance and what the township is saying is deficient, then you need to consult your own professional versus having the township basically coach you through the process as to how to do it. Because we're very specific. This is what the ordinance says. I think Ed sent that letter multiple times. This is what needs to happen. And then I think Mrs. Courtney said, I don't understand. Well, we've met with you. We've attempted to do that. But there's a point in time where it's their project. They have design professionals who we've also met with somewhere along the way that they undertake that task. But this is 18 years in counting that there's one excuse after another.
Well, I think that's I would say that that's an exaggeration. However, what I would say, hey, I walk that trail too.
I know. I think it was 1999 was the last building permit issue.
What I would say is Mrs. Courtney believes that the site plan that she submitted most recently addressed some of those issues. And when she got the same letter back, she was like, I swear to you, and Mr. Barton, she went back to Mr. Barton, and Mr. Barton said, I've addressed these. So that's why I think there needs to be more communication on that. And that's what I would ask to happen.
Well, I don't think there's anyone on this panel that really wants to go out and tear down a building unless it's absolutely necessary. But I think that in this case, we've done more than bend over backwards. And again, all we're going to do tonight, if this resolution is approved, is put this out for bids. And that certainly, by the time we get bids and by the time approving a bid actually comes in front of us, that gives the Courtney sufficient time to work out whatever issues they may have with regard to their plans to renovate the building. So I don't think this is a drop-dead date for them by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm going to move that we authorize the township manager to solicit bids for the demolition of the building located at 214 Valley Brook Road.
Second. All right. Any further discussion?
I think that we would all agree that we're not unsympathetic to the difficulties as a commercial developer in building a project and continuing. But as I said, I've lived here since 2004, and the building has been in disrepair since I've seen it. And I think that even though we're all sympathetic, it's all right for us to have an expectation that the building will be built, something will be fixed. That happens to sit at pretty much the entrance of the township. And it's the way it sits right now, I'm sure Mr. Courtney's not proud, nor are we, because it's not a good representation. So, you know, as sympathetic as we are, we haven't felt assurances that the project's going to end, and it needs to end. That's just my.
No, I agree with you,
simple.
Mrs. Burrow. We're not going to stop the clock on this. We're moving forward. So if you want to submit a site plan that can be approved within the time frame of what we're doing, we'll deal with that also. But right now, unless anyone further.
I have a question for Mr. Lauer. What do you think the turnaround time would be by the time you bid it and it gets back here?
30 to 45 days.
Okay.
So that's the window.
And I think the comments I'd like to make is my recollections of this property. Obviously, at one time there was part of the lumber store there and auto parts dealers.
Easton Lumber.
And I've personally observed what's happened to it since that period of time. And if there's been a question that's been posed to me while I've been on council is, what's happening to this building along Valley Brook, which is vacant? And I can't imagine how many times I've been asked that question, and I certainly feel that way myself every time I drive by it. It's an embarrassment to this community. Thank you.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that would be 7-0. All right. Next item is payroll and bills.
Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed the payroll and bills. I find them to be in order. I make a motion that we approve the same.
Anyone have any comments? All those in favor?
Just that I spoke briefly with Mr. Lauer by email about some credit card bills I had questions about, and he advised me of the corrections and what some of the expenditures were for.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. That is 7-0. Correspondence? You want to talk about the letter from Yvonne Plouffe?
Nope.
Okay. Anything under reports? Anyone have anything under reports?
I did have a question related to Public Works, and also Mr. Zamitis might be able to answer. Mr. Herson's report is very thorough, and he has numerous items listed under drainage issues, which, given everything we've been dealing with recently, I wanted to ask Mr. Zamitis whether or not you anticipate we're going to be seeing any more claims or problems or projects based on some of what
We get a
Mr.
drainage-related call pretty much 2 or 3 times a day. You know, I mean, these are ongoing things. So I'm not exactly sure what your question is. Claims, I'm not sure we've got any claims against us.
Well, as people come to have problems, they come to the township for assistance. That's what I'm asking.
Well, you are going to have one where we have mediated a situation on Raphael between 2 property owners. And again, this is a situation that we'll eventually bring to council where it is not, as far as I'm concerned, a public, it is not an issue for that warrants public expenditures, except that the private property owners are in agreement on implementing the solution, but they can't do it without our help, and we're going to bring that one to you. It's going to be a minor expenditure, but it's one that you'd have to authorize.
Well, he references sinkholes developing on different properties. The question is just because
We've had multiple. I mean, it's been a world record year in terms of precipitation. So yeah, we've had a lot of sinkholes to deal with, a lot of collapsing pipes type of thing that we just, it's an ongoing thing,
Besides the one house on Buffalo Ridge, has there been any major slide structural type issues?
There have been slides throughout the township, all private property, on private property. Nothing that's jeopardizing homes or anything that I'm aware of. I'm sure we're not even aware of all the slides, probably.
Well, thank you for explaining that. The other question I had for you was the liquid fuel. She made a reference to the cost of liquid asphalt rising dramatically.
Correct.
So do we anticipate being over budget on the cost?
We won't be over our budget, what we budgeted for the road program, but I came to you guys, I believe it was July, and I thought it was going to be around a $20,000 increase. We just figured it's going to be more like $30,000 because the price went up dramatically again in August.
So we're going to bring that to you as a change order.
Right.
Mark and I just want to make sure we're both on the same page and comfortable with the calculation.
If I may, one other comment, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to thank Mr. Jarosky for the special finance report. I thought that was very well done, and it was informative.
Sure.
It raised a little concern in my mind about the costs for the tennis program, but I wanted to compliment you on doing that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
See, in my mind, it actually did the reverse. It actually, I think, they're doing a good job in terms of attracting sufficient revenue so that the cost of operating that center is coming close to the revenues they're generating. That's my perspective. But
well, that was the goal. It was always my understanding that is the objective.
Yes.
So.
I had a question about the Public Works. On page 249 in the docket, there's a grading and installation of a new inlet and drainage pipe. Did we do that work in-house? Or was that a contractor?
It's the work on Bruni. It's the work on Bruni Drive.
Did we do that in-house or did we contract
that's
Something for the parking lot?
yeah. I mean, it's in reference to the parking lot that was installed.
Did we do that in-house?
We did. Yeah.
There's like a trench here, but I don't see any kind of like trench boxes. And we have like employees.
Oh, I gotta say, I will tell you this: if a trench box is required, it will be in
these
place.
guys are standing into it.
And the reason I say that is Mr. Herson. One of the first things that Mr. Herson did when he came here was to insist that we have trench boxes so that we did not have.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Mr. Steigel says it has to be at least, it has to be 4 inches or something.
Yeah, it's.
Maybe it isn't, but it looks like it's up to that one guy's shoulders, which. I just wanted to make sure that,
trust me.
We're not,
there may be other things where we might be in trouble, but not trench boxes.
It's funny you asked that, Mr. Akira. I asked that question 2 or 3 reports ago, and he assured me that they have all those plans in place.
Okay, well, I'm glad. Okay, then, thank you.
All right, anyone else under reports? Miscellaneous.
I have a few things. One, as a result of Mr. Jaworski's efforts, the township is in receipt of a grant of $122,400. This is a 90% grant for 2 pieces of equipment that will be acquiring for the Public Works Department. It's a new leaf vacuum and a new limb chipper. So needs to be congratulated for that.
Great. Nice job, Brian.
I reported a few meetings ago that we were going to have a increase in the hospitalization cost for next year. The reality is we have in essence another freeze. This will be the 3rd year in a row that the township's cost for hospitalization has not increased, which is miraculous. We had that.
At some point that's going to come back.
I was going to say at some point.
I'd rather go baby steps.
Well, but I fear at some point you're going to forget those 3 years and we'll have a 20% increase.
Yeah.
As everyone I think in the community realizes, and there's we had that tragedy occur on Marlboro Drive, and as a result, there were 2 children who lost their parents. One of the things that has been done is there's been an account set up at PNC Bank for the purposes of collecting funds to help offset costs for their future education. To the credit of the police department and the municipal employees, we have been collecting funds amongst ourselves for that purpose. I just wanted to let that out there in case anyone in the community wanted to contribute as well.
Is that on the website?
I don't know whether it's on the website or not, but we can make that available. And certainly, I think there may be something at PNC Bank, and we can see whether or not there is. In this case, we can link to that.
Do you know whether the GoFundMe page that was established immediately afterwards is now transferred to them?
My understanding that's down, so I'm assuming whatever they collected went to whoever the beneficiary of that was. So
Just as a sidebar, this past Friday was Peters Township homecoming, and the young lady was elected homecoming queen by her classmates in Peters.
Very nice.
Wow.
Can I say one more thing in praise of Mr. Jaworski?
Don't do.
He did a great job in the last
He's hard to do with already.
Is that not my poor hair to pull out?
Not anymore.
Ryan and I have been exchanging a number of emails about a street light needed at Just About Road, and I wanted to thank him for having it installed and getting it approved. The resident beside there was very cooperative.
Yes.
Thank you very much for getting that done. I think it makes the area a little bit brighter.
Okay.
We just remind Paul we appreciated his efficiency in the last meeting. Just a comment.
I don't think I
he has the
spoke.
record now. So.
It's pretty strong record. Anything for next?
No. One additional item. The students from Penn State have a fundraiser each year, Thon. And in previous years, you would have Penn State students standing in the middle of intersections. The program no longer allows that. The students from Penn State have asked for permission to go door to door.
Didn't they ask that last year and we said no?
Well, I have a request.
2 years ago.
I'm going to say I have
It was 2 years ago.
I made the
request. I remember. It didn't pass.
Yeah. So it's up to council whether or not you want to permit that.
Was it 2 years ago that they were still allowed to stand outside?
No, I think they wanted to go door to door,
yeah.
and there was some requirement that they had to have
ID
background checks or something.
Right, they have to have ID badges.
Yes.
Right.
That's the solicitation.
Right, like any other person who solicits in the township.
And if they did, I don't have any problem with them doing this.
And I think that's why we voted it down, was because they said they couldn't do that because they didn't know which students they'd be sending where, if I remember correctly.
I don't know whether that's true this year or not.
No, the chief does that, or the police department?
It would be the police department.
Maybe they should coordinate with them.
It's not on there.
Yeah, I mean,
If they get, if they follow the solicitation ordinance, I certainly don't have a problem with it.
I'm assuming that we
They're
could
going to
waive.
do it anyway.
Well, that may well be true. I'm assuming that if they do it properly, we would waive the fee that's associated with going door to door.
That sounds reasonable.
Okay.
But they do have to, I agree that they have to really comply. I mean, we
Okay.
really can't have the residents.
Well, and it's not only for, it's for the protection of the college students too.
True.
Okay.
You have to be know who you're sending where, because you never know whose door you're knocking on.
are you now out of items?
I'm done with miscellaneous items.
Good.
No executive session tonight?
Yes, there is.
No, there isn't. Is it really?
Yes, there is.
It's not on my agenda.
It's on the screen right now. We need to talk about a personnel.
Hey, for the next agenda, I'm still waiting for that audit from the ambulance company.
I've been in touch with them. They're preparing a financial statement. I've explained to them, because this is the time of year where we get our annual request for the budget, that without that in hand, it would be difficult to include it.
Well, I just wanted to point out that, there's a statement attached here. It says that, what was the statement? It says September 2017, so it must be wrong. But it says year-to-date citizen senior responses We're 293.
Well, if you look at that report, you get a 17 and 18, but that number's right, yeah. You're right.
I mean, that's, you know, if you divide 500 into $98,000, what are we paying for senior citizen?
I know what you're saying.
Thank you.
All right, does anyone have anything for next meeting's agenda? Any issues? If not, this meeting is adjourned.